Hello. Now we are into the second compact lecture on pedagogical approaches in online education. Now, one of my posits is innovation happens when people work together on a challenge in an open environment full of respect and trust, where they have fun, where successes are celebrated, and where the mistakes, first and foremost, are seen as learning points. You agree? Disagree? If you agree, is this valid for our schools? Is it really an open environment full of respect and trust? We have fun, we celebrate mistakes. Mistakes are learning points. Well, maybe, maybe not. Take a reflection point on that. I claim that we now see a paradigm shift. There is a techno-economical paradigm shift. And it comes when there is a clear mismatch between main institutions of society and new technology and thinking. Static institutions become increasingly outdated in relation to the demands of a new paradigm. Is school such a place? Is it static while the rest of the society changes? You know, this has happened. And at least in my age, I've had a typewriter, and then I got an electric typewriter, and then I got the PC, and then we have Web 2.0. Things are changing so fast. I love my electric typewriter, but then, of course, it was completely obsolete after 2 years. We have the Kodak story. Kodak was one of the really big corporations for many decades. I had a Kodak camera, and I took pictures, film. I took slides, and I had lots of paper photos. And who does that today? I got the digital camera, and that's not that many years ago. And now, who has a digital camera? Everybody has an iPhone. We have had several of these paradigm shifts that can have been quite dramatic. One of them was, of course, typical for Norway, sailing ship. And suddenly we had a steamer instead. And all of a sudden we didn't really have the steamers, we have the motor ships, etc. And it's suddenly there. And everything changes. Is this happening in education? You have the blue ball there, the traditional one, with the facilitated learner, or rather, it's teacher and teaching focused way of doing things. And then we had the constructivist way of doing it, learning by doing. The individual learning in cooperation with others, sure. But the point is, the individual is learning, and the teacher is supposed to help the individual. And all of a sudden, that might not be enough. Suddenly we have not cooperative learning, we have collaborative learning, where the whole group is supposed to raise its competence, not only the individual. That's social constructivism, collaborative learning. As pedagogues, as teachers, we need to know all these three forms. And we have to choose which form is the most appropriate according to what our students are supposed to learn. Here we have a picture of the traditional lecturer at the university. The lecturer prepares a dish of PowerPoints, of lectures, of articles, books. It's a dish of well-prepared information. And in the traditional school, that dish of information was actually knowledge that was disseminated to the learner. Just taking up all this knowledge. And traditionally at universities, we didn't worry too much about the cognitive processes going on in the students, as long as we prepared a good dish of information for the students to absorb. What makes a good teacher then? Well, we have all these traditional factors, but then a good teacher who is able to choose between pedagogical approaches, you have more demands. So usually we say that an engaged teacher loves his subject, loves teaching, is a good teacher. And usually we say that this engaged teacher needs solid subject knowledge. And in primary school at least, the teacher must be strict and just, empathic, well-structured, good organizer. The teacher is the boss, taking the lead. The teacher must be a leader in at least the traditional classroom. The teacher must be able to explain the subject well. And when the teacher is engaging and activating the student, mind you, it's not only the teacher that is active, the students are active. Then we start going over from instructivism to constructivism. We engage the students and activate them. The good teacher, as a rule of thumb, it is not so much about what the teacher does, but rather what she makes her students do. That really is important. In Bloom's taxonomy, we have different steps, higher level and lower level of knowledge. So the lower level of knowledge, or surface level, is you're able to recognize, you're able to name something. That's the lowest level. And then you may be able to combine things, describe and list, but it's still pretty much surface learning. Now, if you want more advanced knowledge, you have to be able to analyze, compare, discuss, explain, criticize, justify. You need higher level understanding for doing that. And going even one more step up, you're supposed to be able to use the knowledge, make something new. You are supposed to be able to hypothesize, make theory, reflect, and use your information to solve problems. So here we have the two first steps, lower steps, surface learning. The two upper steps are deeper learning. You, as a teacher, have to be aware of these differences, and you have to decide at what step your students should be when they have done the learning exercises. So types of learning, just remember this as a teacher. You have the surface approach, focus on facts and details that might be asked. Learn lists and fragments of information. You play the parrot. You hear something, you repeat it. You display signs of learning. Display signs of learning. That doesn't mean you actually have learned it. And learn it and get it out of the way. That's the traditional way of doing things. Deeper approach means you have to interpret meaning, see the whole picture, understand your whole. And you need good dialogue with peers to shape, elaborate, and deepen understanding. it is important to have these dialogues with peers to avoid something that you really should avoid, and that is idiosyncratic understanding, an understanding that only you can understand. We need a holistic engagement for learning. That means see the whole picture, isn't it? So learning demands participation. It is not a spectator sport. So if you agree to this, you must also agree to that the good old-fashioned school of my grandfather, that is where you were sitting and receiving knowledge, that is gone. If we really want to demand participation for learning, then you have to have active students. So knowledge, insight, and competence is actively built by the student. It is not passively absorbed. You can see the difference between knowledge and information. Effective learning prioritizes activity before presentation. And again, a learning environment must ensure that errors, mistakes, are welcome. Errors are key levers for enhancing learning. When you choose appropriately challenging learning intentions and success criteria, enabling the students to attain these goals by monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness. So we're not looking for the correct answer. We have to create a safe and cooperative climate to make and learn from errors from each other, teachers, students, and peers, and optimize feedback. So here we have Jilly Salmon's 5 steps in how to work together online. The first step is we have access and motivation. So access means, okay, we are able to log in, for instance, to a learning management system, an LMS, and you start understanding how it works. And then online socialization, that means you start building up your online identity, and you ask the online identity for others so you know who you collaborate with. When we have that established, we are a group, we know each other a bit, then we start exchange of information. We are at the surface level. We are not really working on building knowledge, but we are collecting information and exchange that. Now, the fourth step, now we're getting somewhere, knowledge construction. We use the information that we have gathered, that's lectures, articles, all kinds of information that we get, movies, whatever. That's information. We gather that and we start working on it together. That's knowledge construction. And the last step, we use this knowledge that we have gained to solve problems. And we develop our own competence and understanding. That's development. So we need all these 5 stages. You cannot just be content at level or step number 1, 2, or 3. You have to consciously work and pressure your students to reach step 4 and 5. So appropriate use of technology. Computers are used effectively when there is diversity of teaching strategies, when there is a pre-training in the use of computers as a teaching and learning tool. That's what it is. It is a tool. When there are multiple opportunities for learning, not only one. And when the student, not the teacher, is in control of learning. And when peer learning is optimized. In other words, you, the peers, your group, that's your learning environment. And that learning environment must be optimized. And the most important learning factor, that's yourself. That's the group members. And of course, when feedback is optimized from tutors and peers, the feedback is friendly and it's constructive. So in this kind of setting, we have a distributed, problem-based learning environment. The constructivist approach means we learn how to exchange and share ideas, encourage fellow students, make statements, give feedback, construct new ideas and concepts in cooperation with fellow students. Remember, the feedback that you give, the feedback that you get, is supposed to increase the competence of yourself and your group. It's called formative feedback, how to improve, not summative, formative. We need to establish communities of practice. Learning is defined as at least partly a social activity and depends on interaction with other human beings. And here we have a kind of graphic over a community of practice. The student and the tutor are part of a global network of practitioners. And here is the new person coming in, there's one in the blue, entering the virtual classroom. The peers waiting for the newcomer helps the newcomer enter through scaffolding. Scaffolding means we make structures facilitating to enter into the community. And here, the newcomer comes into the periphery as a legitimate peripheral practitioner. Gradually, the newcomer goes more central and enters what we call the zones of proximal development. That is where learning takes place. In summary, engage and activate the learner. Learning is active construction of knowledge rather than passive archiving of information. Collaboration enhances learning because the individual must formulate meaningful sentences to participate. You have to formulate your knowledge in your own words. Active learning is better than presentation-based lecture learning. A good learning environment offers varied learning resources, appropriate learning activities, clear and realistic objectives with intended learning outcomes, and interaction with peers and tutors. In other words, one of the main activities when planning studies and planning to build a good learning environment for your students is you have to formulate the learning outcome. You have to plan for the interaction with peers and tutors. And here we see some groups working together online in a global context. Global online collaborative studies, local groups or individuals working in online communities of practice. This is how the future education will work, and it is already on the way.